is that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. All options are on the table to ensure it does not have one.
Iran is ready to negotiate after Trump's warning, and it seems Russia is not very happy about it. You see, Iran has been providing Russia with a lot of drones and missiles to carry out its senseless invasion against Ukraine. And now Trump wants that weapon flow to stop. It's looking like it was not a good idea for Putin to turn down Trump's ceasefire deal. But that's what Russia did, but now it seems like things aren't exactly going to plan. This all started with the B-2 bombers. Just a few days ago, Trump decided to move 7 of our B-2 bombers, who are all capable of destroying Iran's underground nuclear facilities, right on Iran's doorstep. Trump was basically saying, sometimes you gotta remind people why we are $20 trillion in debt.
Because the Indian Ocean is buzzing. American B-2 stealth bombers are in the region. They landed in Diego Garcia. It's a remote island in the Indian Ocean. It serves as a joint base for the UK and the US, and it has been a hub of intense activity of late. The first reports came from open source flight trackers. They tracked unusual movement involving at least 7 B-2 bombers. These planes took off from Missouri in the US from the Whiteman Air Force Base, and they flew non-stop to Diego Garcia in Africa. And they weren't alone, these planes. They were joined by 3 C-17 cargo planes and 10 aerial refueling tankers. That's some serious aerial movement. The US has 20 B-2 bombers in total, 20 bombers. Now 30% of that fleet is in Diego Garcia.
You see, this was a very strategic move to put pressure on Iran. Right when Trump took office, he sent a letter to Iranian Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei. In this letter, he basically asked them, hey, we need to agree on a nuclear deal or else. In fact, as I'm recording this, the Iranian media just released that letter that Trump sent roughly 2 months ago. So let's read some of the content from the letter. Iranian sources published the text of Trump's final letter to Khamenei. It's time to open a new page of cooperation and mutual respect. There's a historic opportunity ahead. The United States, under my leadership, is prepared to take major steps towards peace, de-escalation, and removal of sanctions. If you reject the extended hand and choose the path of escalation and support for terrorist organization, I warn you of decisive and swift response. We will not stand idly by in the face of your regime's threats to our people or our allies. If you're ready to negotiate, we are ready too. But if you continue to ignore the world's demands, history will record that you missed a great opportunity. Now, we don't know exactly when this letter was sent, but we know it was sent sometimes after Trump took office. And we know he gave a 2-month deadline for negotiations to start, otherwise the United States will take swift and heavy response. We don't know exactly when this 2-month deadline is, but it does seem like that deadline is approaching, because these are the comments Trump is making.
We're down to the final moments. We're at final moments. Can't let them have a nuclear weapon. I think that I would have had a deal within 1 month after the rigged election of 2020. They were all set to make a deal. It's an interesting time in the history of the world, but we have a situation with Iran that something's going to happen very soon. Very, very soon. You'll be talking about that pretty soon, I guess. And hopefully we can have a peace deal. You know, I'm not speaking out of strength or weakness. I'm just saying I'd rather see a peace deal than the other, but the other will solve the problem.
Now, Trump says he'd rather see a peace deal than the other. We don't know exactly what he means by other, but we can kind of take a guess if we look at what kind of firepower he's positioning in the Red Sea. Now, we already covered the 7 B-2 bombers that we moved to the Diego Garcia base in the Indian Ocean, but on top of that, we have the Truman Carrier Strike Group in the Red Sea. We also have the aircraft carrier Carl Vinson and its strike group moving from Pacific to the Red Sea. It's expected to arrive in the next few days. But it doesn't stop there. We have 2 command and control ships, as you guys can see on your screen, 2 independent destroyers, 4 military Sea Lift Command MSC, 4 CFT, and of course 2 US submarines. Now, this is not including the air bases we already have in the Middle East.
And the threats to our nations, they don't sleep. They're watching our every move. Iran, Russia, China, North Korea, ISIS, Al-Qaeda. They may be watching this right now. Our military should not be mistaken for a cable news gabfest show. We don't care what you look like. We don't care who you voted for, who you worship, who you love. It doesn't matter if your dad left you millions when he died or if you knew who your father was. We have been honed into a machine of lethal moving parts that you would be wise to avoid if you know what's good for you. We will not be intimidated. We will not back down. We've seen war. We don't want war. But if you want war with the United States of America, there's one thing I can promise you, so help me God. Someone else will raise your sons and daughters.
Luckily, it seems like that as more and more firepower moves to Middle East, Iran is ready to negotiate. We just got the news today that Iran has responded to Trump's letter and it expresses readiness for indirect talk. In fact, that's how the letter came to the United States. Iran sent a response through the Middle Eastern nation of Oman to President Trump. In this response, Iran has signaled that it's open to indirect talks, and they also explained why they won't directly talk to the United States. According to Iranian foreign minister, Iran's policy is to not engage in direct negotiations while under maximum pressure and military threats. However, as it was the case in the past, indirect negotiations can continue. The foreign minister goes on to add that in the letter they have included a detail of their views on the current situation and a response to Trump's letter. Iran also said that they are happy to talk with Trump, but they cannot forget what Trump has done to the country in the previous administration. In his first term, Trump withdrew the US from a 2015 deal between Iran and the world powers that placed strict limits on Tehran's disputed nuclear activity in exchange for sanctions relief. After Trump pulled out in 2018 and reimposed sweeping sanctions, the Islamic regime breached and has since far surpassed those limits in its escalating program of uranium enrichment. Now, the reason Trump pulled out US from the nuclear deal is because Iran had a clandestine nuclear program that was still ongoing while they were publicly saying that they would not continue enriching uranium. That's why Trump implemented the so-called maximum pressure campaign to bring Iran back to the negotiating table. This campaign was so strict that it basically killed the Iranian economy overnight. Iran's oil revenue fell from $70 billion in 2017 to just $4 billion in 2020. I can understand that Iran is not gonna forget the maximum pressure campaign because their economy literally fell into a recession. But let's not forget, Iran tried assassinating Trump during the election campaign that just happened. In fact, they placed a $3 billion bounty on his head, and the situation actually got so scary that Trump actually had to use his friend's plane to go to campaign events, while his staff used the Trump plane so that Iranians would think that Trump was still traveling in the Trump plane in case they tried pulling something. Trump even commented on this when he took office. Let's watch it.
Why say that you're unhappy to sign it if it's Iran and their proxies who have threatened to retaliate against you and your team by killing you guys for taking out Soleimani?
Well, they haven't done that, and that would be a terrible thing for them to do, not because of me. If they did that, they would be obliterated. That would be the end. I've left instructions. If they do it, they get obliterated. There won't be anything left. And they shouldn't be able to do it. And Biden should have said that, but he never did. I don't know why. Lack of intelligence, perhaps. But he never said it. If that happens to a leader, or close to a leader, frankly, if you had other people involved also, you would call for total obliteration of a state that did it. That would include Iran.
Now, one thing I would want to add here is that this was during the election season and President Biden was still the president, and he did make a comment on this. He said basically that if Iran tries to do something like this, it would be an act of war. This was even before Trump won the election, so I would say personally that was a pretty strong statement. Now, this is just one of the many reasons why Iran needs to be freed from the IRGC, because it's really just the IRGC that's pulling all the strings from Iran. They're the one pursuing nuclear weapons, they're the one funding terrorist groups like Hamas, Hezbollah, and Houthis, and they're the one who are sending thousands and thousands of drones and missiles